Right, let's see what kind of job the master in Sasau did for us. Look at that, lad. Well, that's what I call craftsmanship.
As someone who grew up playing a variety of medieval-themed video games, I've been excited for Kingdom Come Deliverance ever since its announcement. After 20 hours of playtime, I can confidently say that this game is fun, challenging, and quite an authentic medieval experience. You might think that 20 hours isn't enough time to give the game a fair review. But given the footage of some other early reviews I've seen, it's evident that some of the reviewers have only played for at least 5 hours or so. And although I haven't been everywhere on the map, I have experienced the majority of the game's mechanics to offer. So Kingdom Come Deliverance is made by the Czech developers Warhorse Studios and published by Deep Silver. One of the key figures of Warhorse Studios is Daniel Vavra, writer and director of Mafia 1 and 2. He left 2K Czech to found Warhorse Studios and looked for investors for his new game. They couldn't find any, and eventually that's what came of the Kingdom Come Deliverance Kickstarter. The game runs on the CryEngine and had a budget of just a few $1,000,000, which compared to other modern games, I think they did really well with the money that they had. So like most role-playing games, you start off in your home village, you learn about your character and his family, and you go around, you see your friends, and you do different chores to learn the mechanics of the game. And the thing with this game is, it's hard to tell when the tutorial actually ends. You think, oh, I've left the village, the tutorial is over, but depending on how you play, the tutorial can go to 3 to 6 hours. And during the tutorial, you learn about the dialogue system and how to fight and how to pick locks and the trading system. The whole dialogue and speech mechanics of the game closely reminds me of Deus Ex Human Revolution's take on it. Like in Human Revolution, you have 3 different variables when you're trying to convince someone. Rather than alpha, beta, and omega, you have strength, charisma, and speech. These 3 stats raise independently of each other, and you simply need to have a higher stat and use it against the person you're trying to convince. So strength is good for intimidating, speech is good for general persuasion, and charm is good for lording it over people, outclassing them in a way. You can also sometimes use money to just bribe people when general persuasion doesn't work. Then we have a lockpicking system, which I'm not a fan of. I get they probably want to make it challenging and realistic maybe. I don't know how to pick a lock in real life, but this system just isn't fun in my opinion. Whenever I got a mission which required lockpicking, I would usually skip it. Over time I did get better at it, but I'm hoping that they will change it eventually. And now for the combat, which I consider pretty fun. It's similar to what you have in For Honor or Mountain Blade. You have directional attacks, except it's a bit more fleshed out than Mountain Blade, but more clunky than For Honor. As you progress through the game, you'll learn different combos and how to feint and parry and riposte. Although the combat is pretty easy to pick up at the start, it does get a lot deeper throughout the game. You'll have to keep learning new moves and leveling up your skills because the enemies you face get more and more challenging as you go on to the story. And speaking of the story, it does start out really slow. I get that they want you to know all the mechanics in the game before you have to play the game openly for yourself, but they do it in a really slow and boring way in my opinion. The only thing I really liked at the start is there is an actual fail state which I discovered by mucking about. If you get caught committing a crime, you get put in the jail and you'll actually skip to the time that your village gets attacked and you'll just die, and I thought that was pretty funny. Even after you leave the village, the game holds your hand for a few hours at least. You can't really go out and explore, you just have to finish a prologue which the game is really focused on. And during this prologue and making a lot of mistakes and having to reload my saves all the time, I realized one of the major flaws with this game, which is the saving system. Although the game saves on mission checkpoints and upon sleeping, your hard saves are dictated by the amount of drinks you have. Your savior schnapps. You only start with 3 of these schnapps, and considering the distance that you have to travel for the tutorial and the things you have to do, stealing and some fighting, you can sometimes have to redo 10 or 15 minutes of progress often. So I downloaded the mod which lets me have infinite saves. Say what you will, but I really don't want to have to redo my progress all the time in an already fairly challenging game. This game features so much traveling between people and towns that I felt the game would be just objectively worse following this savior schnopp system. So if you play on PC, I heavily recommend this mod, at least until the developers do something to make this system less bad. I do actually like the fast travel mechanics in the game though. It mostly reminds me of Fallout 1 and 2's travel system. You click a fast travel point and your character will proceed to travel there. And like Fallout, there is random events which can occur. You can find traders or get attacked or find other interesting people to talk to. If you're drunk while traveling, you can actually just fall asleep and appear somewhere completely off the path that you chose, which I found pretty amusing. The game also has a pretty good hunger and sleep system. I feel a lot of games do hunger and sleep in first very poorly because it becomes a very boring chore to manage. But in Kingdom Come, you'll always come across camps which you can sleep at, and there's always a pot of food, so it is pretty forgiving. Not to mention you can sleep and eat at taverns or go to your home, or even other people's houses if you're on good enough terms. I like that food and sleep is beneficial but not immediately mandatory. If you get hungry, your stamina will drop, and if you get sleepy, your vision will be bad, but if you have to get somewhere quickly, you still can. The exploration in this game is amazing, probably some of the best that I've ever experienced. I feel the exploration in the game is great because there's no mini-map, there's just a simple bar on the top similar to Oblivion or Skyrim. You know where you're going, but you're staring ahead of you and listening to what's around you rather than staring at a minimap all the time, which I find I would always do when playing something like The Witcher. And I know it's optional in Witcher 3, but I feel it's better just to have it not even as an option. And unlike many adventure or role-playing games, you don't get any special eagle vision or Witcher sense or detective mode. You just have to work with the clues that you have in your journal and figure out where to go and what to find, and I feel it does a pretty good job at that. Originally I thought it was kind of boring and unfair, but once you actually put some effort into it, it is pretty straightforward. When you have to look for someone, you look for bloody footsteps or a broken fence or a well-beaten path. I feel it's so much better than following some artificial cloud of smoke which just points you in the direction and highlights everything for you. And even with the pointers that you get to follow, they're not always there, and sometimes when they are there, it is pretty vague. It does point to a general area. It's generally just, if it's something simple to do, if it's someone that is in a town and is well known, you will know how to get to him straight away. But if you're looking for a criminal or someone that's intentionally hiding, or you're looking for a lost item, you'll have to sweep the area, ask people for clues, read notes, and I really like that. It just doesn't hand it to you on a silver platter. There's actual challenge and you feel genuine satisfaction when you actually find something. And when you're traveling and searching for stuff, you will usually be on your horse, which you get pretty quickly. I usually get annoyed with horses in games, not because they're not helpful, but because they always get stuck on stuff, and Kingdom Come is no exception. It does help when you're trying to get somewhere quickly or chase someone down, but damn, it is frustrating when it gets stuck on a bush for 10 seconds. Kingdom Come's story is historically based, and it is pretty straightforward, simple to follow, but fun. Henry is a pretty simple guy, kind of generic, and he's probably that way so you can actually insert your own personality onto him. Given the speech system and all the missions you can do, you can play him however you want, and I feel that's good. I don't mind pre-made characters for role-playing games, it's just annoying when you can only play them one way, but the game does a good job at letting you do what you want. But the story only kind of opens up 10 hours or so into the game. Before that, you're really stuck doing the prologue, and a bit after that, railroaded to do what the game wants you to. Progress the main story, maybe do some side quests on the way, but there's not really any reason to explore. Only later you actually get missions which send you to go across a map and stuff like that. Because although the main story does send you everywhere on the map, each town has its own ongoing story which you can kind of get involved with. And if you're just doing the main story, you won't really stop by long enough to do much else. And I like that as you explore and do missions everywhere, your skills level up with you. It's kind of comparable to the Elder Scrolls series, where the more you use your sword, the better you get at it. If your character talks a lot, you'll get a lot better at that. If you block a lot, you'll get better at that. If you ride your horse a lot, you get better at that. And I feel it's a really organic way to level up your character. And as your character levels up, you can also put traits onto various skills you level up, whether it's drinking or reading or strength. These give you certain benefits and also sometimes negatives. It does remind me of traits from Fallout. But your character also progresses through the gear that you get in the game. Going from something like just a leather gambeson to full plate armor changes how you play the game completely. The game's economy is simple, in my opinion. You'll always really have a lot of money to spend, you get a fair bit for the main quest, and enemies will always drop a lot, whether that's weapons, armor, or other miscellaneous stuff. So you'll always have enough money to buy a better weapon or armor or buy some food or buy some books. One thing I really like about this game is you actually have to learn to read because you start off as a blacksmith's son. Why would you read? I felt that was a pretty just fun feature because you don't have to learn to read, but it is pretty useful. It comes very handy in some quests, and it's also a good source of leveling up your skills quickly through books that you can buy. And speaking of buying, there is a haggle system which is pretty simple. I haven't mastered it, but it's always good to save a few coins or get a few extra when trading. The sound in the game is real impressive for the budget. Weapons sound convincing, the music is very theatrical and thematic and enjoyable. The voice acting is high quality, although I was initially off-put by everyone having a British or American accent.
So are we doing this or not?
Wait! We have to check that the coast is clear.
Why? Deutsch is in the tavern.
But maybe you noticed after all these years that he has a wife and a son.
And that's a problem?
Aye, it is. Henry, you go and lure her away somehow.
Why me?
But then I started to recognize some German accents, and I kind of figured that everyone that is a local and is Czech has a American or British English accent, but everyone which is a foreigner to the Bohemian area will actually have the authentic accent, which is to kind of signal that they're foreign in a way, so it works pretty good eventually.
Who are you? Why did you ambush that wagon?
No doubt you have many questions.
I certainly do.
We will talk. Not here, however. The wolves have ears. Let's meet at the pond after sunset. You'll find me waiting by the big willow tree.
All the main characters do have good voice actors. The game looks nice and runs decently well. I'm playing on 1440 resolution on medium because I just prefer the resolution over higher graphics. I am playing on an SSD though. The load times are still kinda long with an SSD. A lot better than the console load times though, which is really long from what I've seen. So the game runs at a constant 60 FPS for me. Until you get to a lot of people in like a big battle scene, it does drop to maybe 30, 40, which is understandable. That happens in a lot of games. So the game doesn't run amazingly, but I'm pretty impressed still for the budget. I keep saying that, but for a few $1,000,000, they brought a well-made game. There are a few bugs in the game though, which do get pretty annoying. One was when the game saved notification was always stuck on my screen but needed a restart. Not crippling, but pretty annoying. Another was when I failed the lockpicking tutorial, which was a lot because it's hard. I wasn't able to talk to anyone after, which always required a reload. And in general, you do clip into a lot of stuff in this game. Enemies will push you off of stairs and kinda you get stuck underneath stuff, which is really annoying in the midst of combat. I've seen so many different animation and graphical bugs online. I haven't really had any at all. Except sometimes I'd see a black line across the screen. It's some kind of skeletal outline for buildings which would kind of load in when it was obviously not meant to. Another bug is sometimes I'd randomly get a wanted status and the guards would try to arrest me, which is pretty similar to the way that Elder Scrolls does it. You do a crime, they see it, they want to arrest you, and if you try to get away from them, that will aggro them eventually and they'll attack you, and all the other guards will attack you. And pretty much all the missions you do are near guards, so that ruins it and you have to reload your save again. So that's it for bugs, but I do have some gameplay and mechanical nitpicks to talk about. One is that I find it nearly impossible to catch people that are fleeing. Even when I've hit them several times with a sword, hit them in the legs, you go chase them, you tackle them, you knock them over, but that actually makes it worse. It propels them further from you. And sometimes these people have quest items you need or a key, and you either need that key or a very hard lockpicking skill. Another is a lot of places have these very thick bushes which you can't run through, you can't jump over. They're essentially invisible walls which you can see. I understand they want places that you can't go to or you have to go through them a certain way, but In a lot of places, I feel they're unnecessary and it just kind of blocks your movement. You get caught of them. You get caught on a fair few things in this game, which happens in so many games. It's not really a big complaint, but it adds to the jankiness and the clunkiness that this game has. But the thing that annoyed me most in this game was one of the boss fights. This is one that happens 10 hours in. If you're very early into the game and you don't want spoilers, I guess skip, but it's not really a spoiler because everyone knows it's going to happen. But eventually you're on a raid attacking a bandit and cumin camp led by Runt, the big bald-headed guy which took your sword. And there's meant to be a big and tough fun fight in this church steeple, but it ended up being the most unfun thing I ever experienced in this game, and it took a long time to get over. I think I fought him about 30 or 40 times. I even went back a few saves, grinded for a few hours, got some better gear, leveled up my sword and block and warfare skills and strength. And even that didn't make a difference. Now, what I should have done was used a mace on him because he had plate armor. I didn't consider that, and that is a good point. But what I did do is the cheesiest and cheapest bullshit ever. So you're meant to have a big fun sword fight with him, and instead I ran around and I shot him in the head with arrows. I googled it to see how people were dealing with this fight, and everyone recommended run around and shoot him in the head with arrows. And it worked, and that's the most disappointing thing ever. I couldn't overcome this boss fight through playing the game regularly. I had to kite him like a cheap fantasy boss. Maybe it's indicative of me of being bad at the game, but I had fought and killed dozens of people previously. I know he's meant to be a lot harder, but it's somehow easier to run around and shoot him in the head with an arrow rather than fight him, and it's just he has a lot of health, and I feel it's kind of an unfun kind of block to put early into the game. Because right after that, I was upset I killed him that way, but I was happy that I got over it, because after that point, the game's story opens up even more, and there's even more exploration and more fun to have, and I really enjoyed it. But I was stuck on that for a few hours. Maybe it was because I was tired and it was my first day and it was really late. I don't even know if it should be considered a criticism, but it's just my experience and opinion, so take it how you will. What I've learned with this game is it's very challenging and it doesn't hold your hand. So many times I felt, oh, this game is dumb, it's hard, and then, I looked around my environment and I saw an alternative way to get something done. During the raid on Runt's camp, there's archers everywhere and they kill everyone, and if you lose a certain amount of your group, you fail. And then there's a haystack, and I looked at it, and you can light it on fire, and I lit it on fire, and it stopped them shooting me, and I thought, wow, that's really smart, I should have bloody figured that out. I'm kinda used to games holding my hand in a way. A lot of fun games, mind you, but games that tell you what to do and they highlight everything, and going into this game, I was expecting it to be challenging, but it was a lot more challenging than I expected, but I kinda learned to love it for that. It's a game that really doesn't compromise with you. It's a very unique game in the way that it handles things. And for that, it ends up being a very authentic medieval experience. I feel a lot of people will be disappointed with this game because a lot of people hyped it up to be something it wasn't going to be. People comparing it to Elder Scrolls and The Witcher. I don't know why they compared it to these AAA developers which have massive budgets and a big developer team. And the people that saw it as that will be disappointed because rather than being a big, open, accessible medieval role-playing game, it's more of a niche role-play simulation kind of medieval experience. And I love it for that, but I don't think everyone will. If you're looking for a simple and easy to pick up role-playing game, Kingdom Come Deliverance isn't for you. It's a lot harder and more niche than people expected. But if you're looking for an authentic medieval roleplay experience, I think this is the game for you. Despite some bugs, a bad tutorial, a slow story to start, and some mechanics I might not 100% agree with, this is a very fun game, and I'm glad I purchased it. I still have a long way to go with the game, but I am guaranteed to finish it. Thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, I recommend clicking the subscribe button and the bell to see when more reviews are out. You can follow me on Twitter and you can keep in touch with me through Discord. Leave a like if you enjoyed, dislike if you disliked, I guess. Leave a comment if you got any questions, or you can share your opinion on this game as well. Thanks for watching. See you next time.